Hello, patriots. Who's out there loves their country? Hey, God bless America, and God is still working in America, right? Okay, we've got a great evening tonight, very informative. To start out with just a couple of things, the first thing we're going to do is our prayer and our pledge. We can stand. Holy Father, we thank you for your hand in our lives and in our country, and in people bold enough to fight for our country through legislation. We thank you for our speakers who are all here tonight. Lord, have your way in this meeting and make us bold for you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and freeborn.
Amen. Okay, so glad you're all here. Do we have any newbies here tonight? Anybody first time? Okay. Great to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Just so you know, there's a sign-up sheet in the back if you would like to be notified of new upcoming things with our events and various things. We also send out action alerts. Teresa is our great correspondent, and our hardest job is to choose what not to send, because we don't ever want to overload your mailbox. Everything we send is intentional and on purpose. We don't send frivolous stuff. Mainly there's a lot of action alerts and upcoming events that are not just Southern Indiana Patriots event. So on our website, which is sip.red, it stands for Southern Indiana Patriots.red, R-E-D, sip.red, that's us. If you go there, you can find our calendar on that website. We also post articles and events and action alerts there too, so that you can get to what we would like. We do not do any advertising. We minimally use Facebook, and even that's probably going to go away for various reasons. Our only way to get the word out is you, so we appreciate it when you share. And just fast forward our link to some folks that you know. Okay, there's a couple of things. I told you about the sign in. Now, there's going to be a class that's going to be offered. There's papers on your seats. There's papers in the back. End Times Prophecy according to the Bible. If you are interested in that class, sign up. That doesn't mean you're signing up, you're not signing your life away, you're signing up that you're interested. And so if you are, then what we'll do is we'll notify you when that class is established with date and time and all of that stuff. On the back tables, we have a number of things. We have our SIP.red shirts. We have materials for our speakers, John Jacob, Curt Nisly, Niederberger. We have all kinds of materials back there. We have action items, so please visit those tables. Another thing you'll see is that we're talking about very strongly in education choice, school choice, a lot of things that we're involved in, but we kind of focus on 2 or 3 specifics that are currently hot right now. I don't know if you're aware that Indiana has a Parents' Bill of Rights. If you have children or grandchildren, you need to know about this, and you can find out more information in the back. Okay, I would like to introduce you to our new SIP director, Lance. I'm considered the executive director. I'd like you to welcome Lance Pearson, Dr. Lance Pearson, who's our new director of SIP. And Lance is going to tell us about our next meeting.
Hi, I'm sure everyone knows me. I've been at the last, 10 straight meetings or so. I'm very involved with a lot of you. As we take over SIP, I think last meeting we really gave a preview of how we want SIP to merge into 3 general areas of action, what we would call committees. We do want to have a school choice and education type committee that's going to be focused on parenting issues, parents' rights, as Tamara talked about. And that was the focus of the last meeting. This is going to be a political, so that's the second committee, political and legislation. And so as we emerge and go into the fall, that's going to be related to working on campaigns for like-minded candidates. We will have a candidate forum. I expect that to happen in October, our October meeting. We night was a rousing success, and almost every one of those candidates in Southern Indiana won. So let's give a and Jackie Grubbs will win next time. So whichever way, we're patient. We understand that change doesn't happen in one cycle. We aren't in this situation because of one electoral cycle, and we won't get out of it in one electoral cycle. So it's a long game that we want to work on. The third committee, and this will be the topic of our next meeting, will be related to self-sufficiency and homesteading. I think there's a lot of interest in the group in basically how do we become more self-sufficient. This isn't in any sense prepping. We don't want people to drop off the grid, but there are a lot of skills that I think people would be, for example, gardening. I think building victory gardens is a way to be self-sufficient and not reliant on a lot of people that in many senses are not our friends, and sometimes they're even our enemies. So as inflation, we see that taking away. How do we build a sustainable energy infrastructure? How do we build our own gardens? And we'll look that a little bit into homeschooling in collaboration with Sonia's education committee. So that's the third general topic that we want to focus on. And so that next meeting, my hope is to have Pastor, and I haven't got a final confirmation, Pastor Dillman from Henry Community Church, who calls himself the homesteading pastor. We hope to have him in. His wife is an expert on homesteading as well. I hope to get someone up from Bardstown who's an expert on homesteading. And then the final part, which is going to be tacked on a little bit, is the person that is going to be having our Patriot education classes on the Constitution. I hope to have her speak at the next meeting, and we will start to try to have those. I think we've already got 15 to 20 people that have expressed interest in one of those 6-week Patriot education about the Constitution. So let me get out of the way. I'll let Tamara introduce.
Don't go far.
Yeah, I won't go far. Sure.
We're going to bring up our first 2 speakers, and then we're going to have some additional speakers after that. Everything is going to be very informative. So I'm going to ask Curt and John to come up, please. Curt, over here. Okay, I'm going to ask you all something. Can one person make a difference in America? Yes. Madeline O'Hara made a difference in America, right? She changed the fabric of our country. Her fight for abortion changed our country. So I want to introduce you to another person whose burden was to end abortion. We've got 2 people here who are abolitionist abortion fight against it. But particularly, this one stood against the narrative, against the culture, and filed a bill, listen to this, filed a bill, the original bill, that led to the overturn of Roe versus Wade, standing in this room. He initiated the ripple effect of even approaching the topic of ending abortion through a different path other than waiting on the Supreme Court. And the way he did it, he called on individual states to claim their state sovereignty, starting right here in Indiana. And that allows individual states to make their own decisions about abortion. It hit the news nationwide, and it launched a nationwide conversation of ending abortion in America. Can it really be done? Can one person make a difference? Yes. On June 24, Roe versus Wade was overturned in America. And I want you to meet Curt Nisly. We'll be speaking here in a minute. Curt Nisly initiated the bill. Yes.
The second person we want to introduce is John Jacob. John Jacob was elected in 2020 as a state representative. He and his wife Angie are born-again Christians. He and his wife have 6 grown children and 5 grandchildren. They've resided in Indianapolis all their lives. They are evangelists and have done street preaching and sidewalk counseling at abortion clinics for years. He got involved to run for state representative when the establishment swamp refused to pass Representative Curt Nisly's bill to abolish abortion. This is one of the people that's been fighting the hardest in the state legislature over the past year and a half. That's John Jacob.
I want to point out that John Jacob is an answer to much, much prayer. God intervened on behalf of Indiana, our country. Your prayers helped John Jacob to get in to help support pushback in our state. Because Curt Nisly was working it alone, and he was praying for someone to come and help stand beside him. And here's an answer to your prayer, John Jacob, to you.
Well, good evening, Southern Indiana Patriots. Good to be back with you. I'm Curt Nisly, and I was here, about a year and a half ago, maybe? And so it's really good to be back with you. Go ahead, John.
Thank you for having us tonight. I really appreciate it. I don't know if I really and you know, be careful what you pray for, too.
I'm going to go into some of the details of that, and I don't know that we've really talked about that a lot. But before we go further, I'd like to introduce my wife, Mary. Mary, can you stand up? Okay. We're going to do real news to be able to share my life with Mary. Let me tell you about her a little bit. She was the Republican chairman of Elkhart County for 4 years, from 2013 to 2017. She is a FACL instructor. Have any of you heard of FACL, the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership? I see a few hands. Okay, that means that we're going to... Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you. Didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Here we go. So, Mary is an instructor for the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. Political leadership, the key word there is apply. So she'll teach you how to apply it. So you find 20 people, she'll come down and teach a class. So thanks, Mary, for being here.
And I'd like to introduce my wife, Angie Jacob. Stand up, Angie. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for my wife. So when people talk about me being an answer to prayer, she's a vital component to that. She is the other half that I would not be able to do what I do without her.
I know there's a lot of different topics we want to talk about, but since we've kind of got off on this thing of the answer to prayer, I'm just going to tell you a little story here from my perspective here. So it was in so just backing up a little bit, I first ran for state representative in 2014, 8 years ago. I challenged an incumbent Republican in a primary and ended up winning that one. When I got to the State House, I thought that there would be, this group of conservatives. Rumor had it there were like 20 conservatives in the House, and we'd all work together and do good things. And even though we were a minority, maybe, we could at least stand together and push some things. I got and I found out, wow, they've got ways of messing with us. Psychological games and things they do to us to get us to conform, to follow leadership, to kiss the ring of the speaker. And it was in my first year where I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to treat the speakers as an elected representative of the people, just like I am. And there's no reason for me to hold him to a higher place. So, and quickly realizing that the others that I thought were going to stand firm, how the sway that the leadership had on the others. So, forward to 2017, I made an amendment for constitutional carry, appealed the ruling of the chair, didn't have a second at that time. So that was the first time I didn't have a second. 2 years later, in 2019, I also did another amendment for constitutional carry, and I didn't get a second that time either. But it was also in 2019 that hate crimes had come through. And there were several of us that had, said, we're standing against these hate crimes. You shouldn't be judged by your thoughts, you should be judged by your actions. And But when it came through, they broke the rules of the House, the very rules that they had, called me on before. They broke those same rules. And I knew what we had to do. We just have to make a point of order, and if the speaker doesn't decide, we appeal the ruling of the chair. I knew what we had to do. I went to all my other colleagues, and every one of them said, no, they are not going to go along with that. So that day I did not make the point of order. I didn't say anything that day. But there was another representative that inspired me that day. Now, he's not there, he's retired now, and he doesn't realize, because I never talked to him about this afterwards, but he told me that day, says, hey, Curt, looking around the caucus here, it doesn't look like a lot of people are supporting you. Maybe you should try something different. Maybe you should go find other people that would come in here and be able to support you on stuff. So that's when the plan developed. In my mind, that was the day that the plan developed to get other people elected. So in 2020, Representative Jacob put his name on the ballot. Mark Cox is here. Mark Cox put his name on the ballot in 2020. And so you were all a part of my master plan. So, and there were others around the state in 2020. But John Jacob won the primary. He had challenged to become a Republican, won by 71 votes in the primary. The point that I was trying to make here is that during that cycle, in that 2020 election cycle, when you put your names on the ballot, there was a cry around the state, let's get a second for Nisly. And so that was the cry, and you responded to that.
When I was elected, when I won the primary, we were pleasantly surprised, I'll just put it that way. So we proceeded forward. I remember when I sat down with Curt, we were asking for advice on what to do, and he gave us good advice, and we've been through faculty training. He said, now go get yourself elected. So we do look at it as an answer prayer for me getting elected, and probably assume that you're going to, and I'm also assuming you're going to probably deviate to the caucus as you fast forward to.
Oh, we can talk about the caucus at some point here.
Right.
Well, let's just go there since we're there now.
Right.
So John Jacob gets himself elected. So he won the primary, Republican nominee in the primary. Gets to the fall election, he wins handily, like overwhelmingly in his district down there. And like 2 weeks after election day, there's the organization day, the first day of session. But in between there was a caucus. Now, caucus has various different meanings. It's a political gathering. So there was an official caucus called by the Republican State Party chairman, and where we all get together, anyone who was elected, all the Republicans, and then we nominate the speaker and the floor leader and a bunch of other positions. That was the official business of the day. But then once the official business of the day was over, remember, this is a week now before he gets sworn in, before organization day, and the other members of the caucus let John Jacob he was already Representative Jacob, know that he was not welcome there. And I
want to interject on that. I was going to explain. So why I wasn't welcome? Because Representative Nisly had introduced this bill to abolish abortion in 2017. And because my wife and I, along with other abolitionists, were so adamant about abolishing abortion, not regulating it as the Republican establishment of Swampison. So when I found out about Representative Nisly's bill, I thought, this is a good bill. I thought, we need to push this forward. And I kept on going to legislators and talking to them. And I also was coming to the State House, actually open air preaching inside of the State House. And when I say open air preaching, I mean literally John the Baptist style, in the middle of the State House. Literally calling out representatives for the blood on their hands and saying they needed to repent. And so that was not just going on for a few months, that went on for 3-4 years before I was elected. So that's the backdrop of now the preacher now has been elected.
So I'm inside the chamber, and I look back, and this happened for 4 years. 4 years when we're in session. I look back through the window in the back of the chamber, and there is a fellow with a sign saying, Bosma repent. Now, that happened to be the name of the Speaker of the House. And you could see him standing up front, just glaring and face be red, because this fellow, John Jacob, was standing out there like all the time while we were in session. And so now this guy puts his name on the ballot, and so now instead of being on the outside of the glass, now he's coming to the inside of the glass. So that being said, that some of the Republicans, House Republicans, made it clear that they did not want John Jacob to be in the room. And I stood up for him and said, hey, he's a Republican just like all of us in here. Give him a shot. And then they said, well, Nisly, you're part of the problem too. And so then they asked the two of us to not be a part of the Republican caucus. Now, I had been there for 6 years by that time, and I knew what I was expected to do. And I'd been kind of waiting for that day. I knew of other state representatives around the country who had got kicked out of their caucuses, and it seemed to be kind of freeing. And it's like, let's give this thing a try. I think this could be good. So, I did the stuff that they asked me to do, but I made sure I didn't do enough of it, because I didn't want to cross that line and actually get invited back in. So, but that being said, these last 2 years were the best, most fun years I have had in the legislature. I've had more fun than the legislature should be allowed to have these last 2 years. Working with Representative Jacob, we were able to force a lot of roll call votes. We were able to file a lot of amendments. We got some serious policy changes done. I knew that we had some impact, and we can go through some of those things. But what really stood out is in this last election cycle in May, when different candidates, I don't know if you got the postcard, Jackie, but there were different candidates around the state that basically, our candidates on our side were putting out the list of roll calls and how the establishment candidates had voted wrong. And they put out a postcard in return and said, oh, but these things are all state law now. And so the things that they had voted against before they voted for. And I realized there's a whole dozen things here, good things, that we pushed to a vote. And they voted down every time. But later they would come back and stick them in something else. So we can go into a lot of those, some of those details of those different things. But by acting as a minority caucus and using the rules to our advantage, we were able to push hard on different issues, and we got real good results in just 2 years.
We had also talked about, what I found interesting is we talked about our strategy before we actually hit the floor. Can I talk about that?
Go ahead.
So, what I found interesting, we had kind of 2 courses of action. We thought, now that Curt had his second, we thought, well, do we want to just start filing amendment after amendment and just basically hanging up the process? And so after a little bit of thought and everything else, we thought, no, we're going to present good and thoughtful legislation. And what I found really interesting is we had a pivotal conversation. I had a bill that I got bipartisan support for, and I had talked with one of the Democrats that had actually voted for my bill, and Curt had voted for my bill. Thank you.
Was it a bill or an amendment?
It was an amendment. An amendment. And the Democrat, what I found interesting is the Democrat said he thanked Curt and myself because he himself said, thank you guys for not just filing a ton of just frivolous amendments and hanging it wasn't just him, and he was reflective of what the rest of the Democratic caucus, they knew that we could literally destroy the session and clean everything up, and we did not. So I found that very interesting as far as the logistics of understanding and knowing what you can and can't do, and knowing that what we could have done and we didn't.
Okay. So I'd like to just follow up there with that. And we talk about the House Republicans and the House Democrats. And I'm a Republican. Most of you in here are either Republicans or Democrats or something else, or independent. That's all good. But just to kind of frame and show why what we did was very important. So in Indiana, in the House of Representatives, there is a supermajority of Republicans. What that means, it's over 2/3. That means that every Democrat can leave and go to Illinois for the whole session, and nothing would change. You can get a quorum. A supermajority gives you the quorum, and a supermajority can suspend the rules. In the Indiana Constitution, it says every bill must be heard on 3 separate days unless 2/3 of the members vote to suspend that rule. And so, in some sense, a supermajority is dangerous, especially if they're all hell set on sticking together. So, in the 8 years that I've been in the legislature, it's always been a supermajority. That means the Democrat Party has been absolutely neutered, absolutely powerless. So any pushback to bad ideas has to come from inside the House Republicans. But with the structure, the leadership structure that they have in place there, it is very difficult for anyone to stand up against that structure. So that means that the big government, bad ideas that come from Republicans, believe it or not, Republicans do have bad ideas that are dangerous to our liberties sometimes. And the only way to fight back in a supermajority is for Republicans on the inside to fight back against from the inside. So that was the position that we found ourselves in. And that's why it is very important what we did. And for new representatives that are coming in, we need to stand, beat them up and let them know that we're behind. The power comes from the people. It doesn't come from the leadership of the House. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, I think you want to talk about some bills.
Well, I know that one thing that's really big on everyone's mind right now is the whole abortion issue. So can we kind of step into that, because we're going to be running ourselves out of time soon here.
Please.
Okay.
If you want to get the backdrop, then I can if that was well,
Yep.
we did up negotiation.
Yep.
I do it that way.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a few minutes here and kind of step through the history that led up to the bill that Tamara was telling you about. I want to talk about the Indiana Code, what it says today, and then I want to talk about the bill that we've been talking about, to kind of go into some of the details there. So, as you know, the Supreme Court of the United States has said that the abortion issue does not belong to the federal government, it belongs to the states. They agreed with me. So back in 2016, we had this idea of writing a bill to ban abortions, claiming state sovereignty. It was kind of a novel idea. Like, I'd never heard of it, anyone taken that approach before. I'd come up through the Tea Party and we had studied the Constitution, and we knew that the 10th Amendment to the Constitution says that all powers not delegated to the federal government by this Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people. And it was obvious to me that Roe versus Wade was unconstitutional. It wasn't right. There was nothing based in the Constitution there. The Supreme Court was wrong. I remember in the fall of 2016 watching TV, and there were these two candidates for president who were having this debate. It was Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton says the Supreme Court was wrong on whatever her issue was. And it's like, wait a minute. If Hillary Clinton can say the Supreme Court was wrong, then I can say the Supreme Court was wrong. I know that they are wrong on the abortion issue with Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court has been wrong before. Back in the 1800s, before the Civil War. Just before the Civil War, the Supreme Court said that slavery was okay and legal in America. Before the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s, the Supreme Court said that segregation was okay and legal in America. The Supreme Court was wrong in both of those cases, and it took a big cultural upheaval to get those things corrected in those cases. So, coming back to 2016, as we're working on this bill, it's like, okay, the Supreme Court was wrong. What do we have to do to fix it? Well, read the United States Constitution. It's not given to the federal government to determine abortion issues of life. So that was what we took and ran with. So let me tell you about the Indiana Code as it stands today. In the Indiana Code today, it says that the General Assembly finds that life begins at conception. It says that in the Indiana Code. Here's what's really egregious about this. A woman that wants to have an abortion, 18 hours before she has an abortion, she has to sign a document that says, the doctor told me these things, including that life has already begun in my body, that life has begun at conception. And a bunch of other things. She has to sign a document saying, the doctor told me these things, and he gave it to me in writing. And I'm signing this document saying that he did that. So that's the informed consent of our abortion regulations. There's a whole bunch of other regulations of abortion. That if you do all these things, then you can kill the baby. There's another part of the Indiana Code. It's the criminal code. In the criminal code, it talks about murder. What is murder? It's the intentional taking of another human being's life. Except a legally aborted baby, as defined in the abortion code. There's this voluntary manslaughter, and it defines what voluntary manslaughter is. Except a legally aborted baby, according to the abortion code. Involuntary manslaughter, same thing. There's infanticide, killing a child, is a crime in Indiana unless it's a legally aborted baby, according to the abortion code. And there's even feticide, which is killing an unborn baby, unless it's a legally aborted baby, according to our Indiana, the abortion code. So, when we went to write the bill, what we did was we went through the Indiana Code and found any reference to abortion, and we just strike it out. What we're doing is treating an unborn baby like a human being. Novel concept, right? We go into that criminal code with those exceptions and just strike them out and say, hey, murder's murder. Well, it doesn't matter. It's just murder. infanticide, all those things, we're just striking those out. We go into the abortion regulations and just strike out that whole thing. Now, there is that one part in there that says that life begins in conception, that part of that informed consent thing I was talking about. We do take that out and put it into a new chapter, and we explain what it means. We explain that, if there's a complication to a pregnancy, something like that, the doctor should simply treat both, should realize they're two patients and treat them with equal respect. Don't kill the baby if you have to deliver it early, if you have to do whatever you have to do, but just remember there are two patients here, and treat them with equal respect and care. So there's that clarifying language. And then we talk about if a federal court, say the federal court has, federal government has no business in this matter. We quote the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution specifically, which I said earlier, anything not delegated to the federal government is reserved to the states. So we claim the power that we already have been given as a state. And then we say if any federal agent, there's a whole list of anyone that the federal government would send into the state to force us to do abortions, then our sheriffs, our county sheriffs, should arrest those federal agents. So that is House Bill 1282. This year, if you go to the IGA.in.gov, Indiana General Assembly, IGA.in for Indiana.gov for government, and look up bill, there's a bill search, 1282. You can find the bill, you can see everything that I'm talking about there. That is what we are pushing for in the upcoming special session. So, in a few days, July 25th, so a week from Monday, the governor has called the legislature back in for a special session. Originally, the governor said it was because we've got all this $5 million extra dollars lying around because they're taxing us too much, and wants to send $1 billion of that back to us in the form of $125 checks. So that was what the governor called the special session for. He had already called it before the Supreme Court handed down their decision on June 24th. So after the Supreme Court handed down their ruling, then the governor has said that he expects and he hopes the legislature to take up the issue of abortion here in Indiana. Now that the federal government has given us permission to do it, now we can act on it. So July 25th is when session starts. It'll probably go at least 2 weeks, but that is the time when we will be dealing with the issue of abortion here in Indiana. And what we are advocating for, and John will go into more details, I'm sure, that we want abortion to be eliminated from the Indiana Code. We do not want even, the idea of killing an unborn, a preborn human being is not something that should be happening in a civilized society. We're going to look back in 140 years from now, like we look back at the Civil War, the slavery before the Civil War, and says, that was stupid. Why did they do that? Weren't they civilized people? How could they have slaves? Sometime in the future, we're going to look back and say, what? In America, for 50 years, they let people kill unborn children? That was stupid. That's the way history is going to look back at the time period over the last 50 years.
Thank you, Curt. So I'll pick up where he left off and take my part of this. So I think everybody in here will agree that human life begins at conception. And because human life begins at conception, the intentional taking, as Curt mentioned, what murder is the intentional taking of an innocent human being's life. And so since human life begins at conception, we're all created in the image of God, abortion is always murder. So as Curt was talking about, we just want abortion to be treated the same way for an issue of a born person versus a preborn person. So when a born person is murdered, that person is charged with murder, that commits that crime. And so we're asking for the same thing when it comes to abortion. So when I'm going to dial back also a little bit to when I was preaching at the State House, because our Republican establishment swamp, they say that they are pro-life. They say they're for babies, but yet all they've done for decades is regulate abortion. In other words, that they've brought bill after bill after bill saying, as long as you complete this item, do this item, you can still murder your baby. We had a previous bill that a woman they have the chemical abortion pill. If the woman wanted to get her abortion pills, she could actually call up to the abortion clinic and get her chemical abortion pills. Well, the establishment swamp proposed and put forth legislation that said that a woman could not call in and get her murder pills anymore. She had to actually come into the abortion clinic. So in other words, they're saying you can't call in now. You have to come in and get your abortion pill, and you can still kill your baby. Another one was that you could take your preborn baby after you murdered your baby and take the baby back to the abortion clinic. And Indiana Right to Life worked with the Republican swamp to pass that bill so that a woman who took the chemical abortion pill and she murdered her baby, she could take that baby back to the abortion clinic, and then they would give a proper burial to the baby. They said that was a pro-life win. So we're saying, no, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. All preborn children should be given the same protections as you and I. God expects, he expects magistrates, which is what legislators are. Legislators, judges, people in the executive position. They are put in a position of authority, and there's great responsibility with that. And that part of that responsibility is to protect the people. And part of protecting the people is to punish the evildoer. But right now, that's not the case. We're allowing wholesale murder to go on. If I told you that it's okay to regulate murder, people would say, well, that's crazy. I ask people that all the time. Is it okay to regulate murder? They say, no. Is it okay to regulate rape? In other words, you fulfill these requirements, you can still rape somebody. They say, no, that's crazy. Well, but we do it with abortion, don't we? We sit there and say, as long as you fulfill these requirements, you can still murder your baby. So what we're doing right now is we're going around the state. We're trying to mobilize as many people as we can, people who love life, who don't just want abortion regulated, but they want abortion banned. They want a complete end to abortion. So the call out tonight is for you, and also to reach out to everybody you know, to reach out to them, to call your representative. Find out who your representative is if you don't know. Call your senator. Call the Speaker of the House, Todd Houston. Call the head of the Senate, the pro tem, Roderick Gray. Tell them that you do not want abortion rights to be regulated. You want abortion completely ended. And specifically, you want Curt Nisly's and John Jacobs' life bill, HB 1282. You want the language from that bill to be the abortion bill that they run. Now, they're going to push back and they're going to say, well, that bill's dead and everything. So just keep in mind, don't let them play you. They can take the language from that bill and they can run it. Now, I do know that we had a rally on June 25th at the State House, and we had around maybe 400 or 500 people. We have been trying to deal with that. We've been trying to gather people from around the state for weeks. Pro-aborts gathered in a matter of a couple of days and literally outnumbered us 3-1. So I'm just letting you know that the pro-aborts, the pro-choice side, is going to mobilize thousands of people to sit there and try to keep abortion legal in Indiana. And they're going to put immense pressure on the legislature to keep abortion rights or expand abortion rights. Now, there's also the middle of the road pro-life weak side that lines up with typically the right to life. They're going to line up with the establishment, okay? So what we need is, and there's going to be a massive amount of them, a number of those people as well at the State House, and also they're going to be calling and emailing. So what we're asking of you is we're asking to mobilize tens of thousands of people that will call and email their legislator, their representative, their senator, the Speaker of the House, the head of the Senate, the governor, and that they will show up also when the committee hearings start July 25th at 12 p.m. We're calling you out to the Indiana State House, downtown Indianapolis, on the 4th floor. And then,
Which day is that?
July 25th.
It's a Monday.
Yes.
Monday, July 25th, high noon,
Yes.
State House.
Yes, fourth floor, because there's going to be a large number of people in the State House. Now, the people have expressed concern about the pro-aborts who can be pretty passionate. There's going to be a lot of security. So, state police will have their security beefed up. So, I would not be concerned about that. But, you know, how many of you have been through faculty training? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, so part of faculty training, they say, showing politicians demonstrable proof of a large numbers of angry voters. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to show demonstrable proof of a large number of angry voters who are saying, we expect you politicians, you legislators, to end abortion. No exceptions. And you need to remind them, they work for you. You do not work for them. Because they try to make you feel like you work for them. You serve them. That is not the case. They work for you. Curt and I are to be servants to the people, and so are they. So my call to you is again, so I won't repeat it. There is a sheet of paper on the back table, white sheet of paper. It has a call to action. It has the contact numbers for the head of the Senate. And also, there's some booklets back there on what abolition is, the ideology as it parallels with the abolitionists of the slave day, where they wanted to completely end slavery. It's the same ideology except applied to abortion. So now, keep in mind, the Republican establishment swamp is going to try to keep us off kilter by not putting information out. So the flow of information is going to be limited. We can already see that right now. We don't even know what kind of bill that they're going to be putting out there. In addition, they're going to change things up. I have no doubt that they're going to try to keep us off kilter, limit information, because that limiting of information is going to keep people confused as to what they really need to do. So the key is that we need to keep you informed as far as what's going on, up to date, and what the call to action is. And if the call to action changes, we need to let you know what to do. So what I'm asking for you to do is, and everybody that we've been putting out, is text 4-LIFE. Just get out your phones and text the number 4-LIFE, 4-LIFE, to 66866. It's going to ask for your phone number, your email, and then what we will do is we will get information out to you as far as the process of what we're planning to do and what we're calling you to do, and then as changes come up, we can let you know what the changes are. So again, text 4-LIFE, the number 4-LIFE, 4-LIFE, to 66866.
All right. Well, according to the clock there, we got about 4 minutes here. So, and we're supposed to take questions, and I was going to say that earlier if they've got questions. So, what's that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then we can just keep talking for 4 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, what else do we talk about? Should we talk about some of the victories?
Yes, talk about some of the bills that we did get victories on.
Okay, let's talk about Baby River first of all. Baby River was born in a hospital in Muncie, Indiana, a few years ago. Baby River was a few days before viability. The standard that was set by the Supreme Court, the 24 weeks, the arbitrary number that the Supreme Court was using. Now, in Indiana code, it was just silent about how you treat a baby before viability. In the abortion code in Indiana today that I was talking about, it says that if a baby survives an abortion, they have to be given life-saving care and given a birth certificate if they survive an abortion. But there was nothing in the Indiana code that said that you have to give life-saving care to a baby that just survives birth. So it was in the 2021 session, the first year that John Jay was in there, a bill came through that it was, this is the right place for it, the germaneness thing. And so I offered the language that just said, hey, if a baby is born before viability, without regard to gestational age, then it has to be given life-saving care and given a birth certificate. And the Republican, well, the whole chamber, but almost everyone, there were 3 people, it was John Jay, me, and one other member, voted for that language that day. Now, Hoosiers for Life heard about that, and they started emailing their members and communicating this around the state. It says, look at what all but 3 Republicans have voted against this. All these Republicans say they're pro-life, but they've all voted against this thing. Well, guess what happened? Within 10 days of that, they found another bill in committee and put our language into it, the Baby River language into it, passed out of committee, passed through the House, the Senate, the governor signed it, and as of July 1st, a year ago, 2021, in Indiana, a baby that is born without regard to gestational age, if a baby is born alive, it has to be given life-saving care. The only reason that is law in Indiana is because we pushed it to that vote, and they reacted to us and gave us that policy. And as I mentioned earlier, there's about 12 other examples like that.
There was demonstrable proof of a large number of angry voters, so they went ahead and passed that legislation. You want to talk about constitutional carry?
Oh, well, constitutional carry, very similar. I'd already mentioned earlier that I had attempted to get the roll call twice and failed both times, didn't even get the vote because there wasn't a second each time. It was in 2021, so John Jay had just got elected. He filed the constitutional carry bill his first year, and that was the first time that a constitutional carry bill actually made it to the floor, and we got a vote. Now, it was a messy version. It wasn't clean. But going into the 2022 session, the beginning of this year, first week in January, we get in session. First thing out of the gate, constitutional carry, clean constitutional carry, comes through, gets passed out the very first week that we were in session. Now, it's stalled in the Senate. They did the Senate-y things over there. But on the last day of session in March, there was a conference committee report, got constitutional carry, clean constitutional carry, passed the House, passed the Senate, governor signed it. Constitutional carry is law in Indiana as of July 1st, a few weeks ago, last week, because we use the confrontational model, the FACL model, the approach of doing that. They knew that there was an election coming up, and they didn't want some angry gun organization called the National Association for Gun Rights coming into Indiana and stirring up a whole lot of stuff. So,
and again, keep in mind, the Republicans say that they're pro-2A, so the last thing that they want, they being the establishment swamp, is for Representative Nisly or myself to get credit for the pushing forward the constitutional carry bill. Because I had the bill and Curt co-authored with me, they knew that they were going to
So where do we go from here? So as you know, this was a pretty lively primary season around the state of Indiana. There were 39 races in the House, Republicans in the House. Of the, I think it's 40% of the House Republicans that were running for re-election had a primary challenger this year. Now, that included me and included John Jacobs. And on election night, neither of us made it through. So I'm in my last term for this go-around, and John Jacob is in his last term for this go-around. Jackie Grubbs was one of those. Thank you, Jackie, for all you did, your hard work. Anyone else out there? Okay. So now the establishment was playing their tricks. They got a few of our candidates got kicked off the ballot because of some stupid laws that were made. Some of them, John Colburn did not run because of the stupid law. But it's not over yet. The Indianapolis establishment spent $3.4 million in this election cycle. 95% of the money that they spent was against our candidates. So, how often are they going to be willing to spend over $3 million in a primary? Think about that. We made them spend that this year. Will they be willing to do it again in 2 more years? That being said, we did have a few Liberty candidates that did make it through. And I have high hopes for several of those candidates. Now, I do know that walking to the State House, it is tough. And it will change you. It changed me. And I know it changed you. But how do we handle the pressure? And how do we deal with it? So let's keep working with the candidates that did make it through and will get elected. And let them know, keep reminding them that the power is from you, from the people, not from the leadership inside the State House. There are other things that are going to be happening. There's another big election coming up in 2024. We know the presidential election is coming up in 2024, but did you know that every precinct in the state of Indiana is going to be electing a precinct committeeman for their precinct? So, state of Indiana here, everything, the election, smallest election division is a precinct. That's what's your ballot. Everyone in your precinct has the same ballot. And that's, when you go to vote, you have to go to your precinct to vote, unless you're vote center county, and then it's a little different. But you still have a ballot for your precinct. The Republican Party, the very basic foundation of the Republican, it's the voters. But the voters will elect a precinct committeeman for each precinct in the state. There's thousands of them, probably 5,000 or more. You know the number, Mary?
It's 5, just a little over 5.
5,000 precincts in Indiana. So there is a Republican precinct committeeman that is elected in each of those. Now, there's a few things that this precinct committeeman does. If there's a ballot vacancy, they get to vote for the replacement. So up to half of the legislators in the House of Representatives and the Senate in the state of Indiana got their start through a caucus by the precinct committeeman in their district. That's one of the things is office vacancies. But the other thing they do is elect the county chairman, which my wife Mary was a county chairman. She got elected by the precinct committeeman. What the county chairman then do, they elect the district chairman who serve on state party. There are 22 people on state party. The Republican, this is state Republican Party. It is made up of district chairmen who are elected by county chairman. So, over the next few months, Mary's already preparing this. And so, hopefully we can come down here, but we want to train you on the precinct, the whole picture of the precinct committeeman project. We want to let you know what you can do, how we can take back our Republican Party. Okay, are we out of time now?
I don't know, the only thing I think I want to say is, every legislator, every political official makes a God-given oath to uphold our U.S. state constitution. And honestly, as I watched for the last 2 years, and even beforehand, but as Curt's a veteran, I'm a newbie, and watching my colleagues, not just the Republicans, but the Democrats, violate their constitutional oath over and over and over and over and over again, and trying to justify that, I'll tell you what, it's sickening. And people like that, they need to resign. If they're not going to do their God-given duty, they need to get out. And if they're not going to get out, as Curt was saying, and there's a plan, they need to be booted out.
Thank you to each of you for coming out tonight. I see hope. I feel hope tonight. We're not done yet. America's not over. Indiana is not, we're not done yet here in Indiana. We're going to continue to fight for our liberties, for life, for liberty here in Indiana. And I see each one of you. You are where the power is. Don't give up the fight. Keep going.
Amen. Thank you. So, the question, can one person make a difference? Yes. Right? What does the scripture says about one angel going to fight, but then if you have 10,000 angels, I can't remember the scripture, my husband probably quoted with his eyes closed. But anyhow, we need to back up these people in our new legislature. So, we've got 2 more folks that are going to speak. I'm going to call John Colburn on the carpet for a minute to come up here. And then we're going to hear from John.
Thank you, Tamara.
I have a question for you.
Already?
Yeah. Little birdie told me you got a big event happening tomorrow night.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to talk about that. Let me introduce John just for a quick second. John Colburn was going to run against
Karen
Eagleman, and it didn't happen. I've asked him to share a couple of minutes about what happened, and he's not going away because we're not going to let him. And I hope you clear your calendar for tomorrow night because there's a really cool event coming on.
Well, thank you. My name is John Colburn. I had every intention of running as a Republican candidate against Karen Eagleman in Indiana House District 70. As I was putting together my paperwork and getting ready for that, the GOP chairman in Clark County informed me that he was not going to allow me to run because I didn't meet the 2 primary requirements. And so I thought, well, if I can't run for the Indiana House of Representatives, I'll run as a convention delegate. Because in the Republican rules, you only have to vote in 1 primary. But he kept me off that ballot as well for the same reason. We even had a hearing in front of the election board, which I did not prevail in. So, but I am a Republican, I am a constitutional conservative, and so I'm going to be back in 2024, and we're going to go to Indianapolis and hopefully start building on the foundation that John and Curt have laid which kind of leads me to the situation I found myself in. I am going to be defending the GOP chairman and the Republican candidate for sheriff tomorrow night. I was doing some research on the Democratic candidate for sheriff and reading through some of his things, and he made a statement that unequivocally we live in a democracy as opposed to a republic. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, to the point where I believe that that's a disqualifying position. And so I made that statement. He took that a little personal, I guess, and challenged me to a debate. And that debate is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Charlestown Square. And so if you don't have anything else going on, come out and watch. It will be entertaining, if nothing else. But I believe that this is it's an important distinction. It may seem trivial, it may seem trite, but I think it's vitally important that we understand that we live in a republic, not a democracy. We see what's happening in Washington with the demonstrations in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes and things such as that. That is a demonstration of mob rule. That's not a demonstration of rule by law. And so that's tomorrow night I'm going to be defending the rule of law and our republic against the Democratic candidate for sheriff in Charlestown. And I hope you guys can show up. Thank you.
7 p.m., Charlestown Square. And I'm going to try and make it myself. We have one person that's standing Niederberger here. Oh, there you go. You can come up. I just want to have a few comments. I'll give you time to applaud because I'm going to applaud him myself. I want to speak just a minute. We'll have a question and answer session, and I guarantee my question will be leading that off. And it's going to be going into some of the dirty tricks that the establishment Republican Party played against both Curt and John to get them out of office. And so, not to take away from their thunder, let me tell you a little bit. This isn't an Indiana problem. It's a national problem. It happens everywhere. And so, the original idea for this meeting was, what's wrong with the establishment Republican Party and how do we fix it? And so just let me give you the story of 3 Kentucky candidates, which have a very similar story to both of these men. And just south of Lexington, Kentucky, a man named Andrew Cooperrider, who was a Liberty candidate, wanted to run for state senate. He basically protested against Andy Beshear, who is a Democrat governor of Kentucky. He's the only Democrat that we have in Kentucky, I think. But somehow he got elected. And so he challenged him by organizing protests on the lawn for all of the COVID restrictions and mandates that the governor was issuing. Now, the Kentucky legislature took away almost all the governor's power, so he's basically a figurehead at this point. Thank you. But Andrew Cooperrider led a lot of those protests. He decided he's going to run for state senate. Because of his initial outspokenness, I think he raised somewhere around $100,000 in the first few months of his campaign. The establishment Republican candidate that he was running against decided not to run. The state senators in Kentucky, the establishment state senators, thought he was a big enough threat, however, that during redistricting, they put him into a district with another Republican. So you have a situation where Andrew Cooperrider is running as a Republican in an open election where there's no other Republican even running. And rather than just let him win that race, they decided to put him into a district with an existing incumbent in order to have to face off with him. They were so worried that he would be elected that they put $400,000 behind his opponent in that race. They were successful. He only lost by 8 points, but you only need to lose by 1 point, it turns out. We had a situation in Shelby County where a person who runs a custom gun shop, a Navy Marine, and an unbelievable candidate who I hope runs for Secretary of State, keep that on His name was Aaron Reed. He decided that he wanted to run for state senator because his Republican senator had sponsored red flag legislation in the last session. He owns a gun shop and he understands that restrictions on the Second Amendment are a threat to him personally, not just the Constitution. So he decided to get into the race. Thomas Massey, who is a libertarian-oriented, he's actually my rep. He got behind Aaron Reed. I was actually at his kickoff event and he was the keynote person. Aaron Reed also raised about $125,000 in the first quarter. They thought he was such a threat that they drew one of the few really good senators in Kentucky. They redrew her district so that it includes only her same county and now a lot of Jefferson County, so that only one of those two will ever be able to hold that seat. She drew both of them into the same district. And then lastly, Alan Miracle, who is just south of Louisville. Shelby County is just east of Louisville. Bullitt County, where Alan Miracle wanted to run. He's a former state representative, a very, very outspoken Liberty candidate who would have beaten an existing state senator, whose son is also a state representative. That state representative is one of my state reps, unfortunately, his son. Basically got them to draw one district out of his existing district so that he wasn't able to run this time. So in order to protect an incumbent, an establishment Republican, they drew out one district from the entire Senate district. They took out one precinct that he lived in so that he couldn't run this term. And then finally, there's a law on the books that says you have to have 2 signatures from a Republican in order to be entered onto the Republican ballot. It's a pure formality. We had a candidate out in the western part of the state who had her stepdaughter sign on to that form. It turned out her stepdaughter was registered as a Democrat at the time. And so they found some anonymous Republican to take that to court, and she did lose the court case because by the letter of the law, she didn't have 2 Republicans to sign that initial form to get on the ballot. She's running as a write-in candidate, which is what leads me to Danny Niederberger. Most of you know Danny Niederberger. Danny Niederberger came and spoke. He was going to challenge who I call the Hoosier Mitch McConnell. That's Todd Young. Now, would I prefer Todd Young over the Democratic challenger? Sure, okay, in the sense that I'd like warm milk more than rotten milk. So Danny Niederberger, as you can tell, he's bringing youth into the party. He's a constitutional conservative, and we are a constitutional republic without any doubt. And so I'm going to let Danny Niederberger come up. He's running for state senator still against Todd Young, but as a write-in candidate. A mountainous hill to climb, to be sure, but it takes courage to run, and Danny Niederberger has plenty of courage.
Thank you. It's great to be back here. I haven't been back here in a while, actually. It's been a little over a year now since I came out and talked to you guys. How many of you guys were here last time I talked? Okay, good. Some people aren't. That's great. Because I always like to start with where I came from, where I grew up, because you never, ever forget where you came from. So I grew up in Westfield, Indiana. If you don't know where Westfield is, it's called Carmel's little brother. Carmel, Indiana, just 20, 30 minutes north of Indianapolis. I come from a big household. I have 4 older sisters, an older brother, and 2 younger brothers. So yes, very big household. I went to Westfield Public Schools my entire youth and graduated from Westfield High School in 2010. Went to Purdue University, graduated in 2015 with a major in accounting and a major in management. I spent 2 years working in Indianapolis for a registered investment advisor. Basically, my position, it was a 17-person firm, and at one point, I was the only person in the portfolio accounting department. And I had to reconcile about $750 million in assets every single day. So for somebody who was about 23 years old, I think 22 when I first started, that's a pretty big task. A lot of responsibility on my shoulders. I spent 2 years down in Miami, Florida, working for a hedge fund as a fund accountant. And those were great times, but at the end of the day, home is where the heart is. And in January of 2019, I ended up moving back to Indiana. Now, to my surprise, my boss didn't want me to leave the firm. So he offered me a chance to work remotely from Indiana while retaining my position at this hedge fund. And over the past few years, not only have they just retained me, they've expanded my role. So I run the operations and accounting departments for this hedge fund. What got me into politics? Oh man, that's a great story. I ran for Congress in 2020. U.S. Congress, ran for the 5th Congressional District. I was one of about 16 people in the race. And if you know anything about a 16-person race, you can't get your ideas out at all. The amount of forums that we were at where they give you 60 seconds to respond to a question, where they ask you, hey, are you pro-life? And basically your only answer you can get is, yeah, I'm pro-life. But for those of you that know, it's not a simple question. So where I would shine is in these forums where only 6 or 7 of us would show up, and they ask the tough questions. They ask the questions like, are you pro-life, that you believe, since conception? Or are you one of those okay with rape and incest, 15 weeks? They ask those type of questions. And I sat there, and when it was my turn, I raised my hand and I said, life begins at conception. And everybody was just stunned. And I said, you know what, let's bring in some statistics. Everybody likes to say that they would always accept rape and incest, but look at those statistics. 0.05% of all abortions in the United States are due to rape and incest. That is such a staggering low number. I mean, I told this group in that forum, at the end of the day, does the nature of conception dictate the life of the child? And that was when I got my start. Because the amount of people in that room that knew, wow, we've found a millennial that isn't like the rest. That's how I got my start. And a little bit down the line, I attempted to take on Todd Young in the primary. I know a lot of you guys know that. So in the primary, you have to get 500 signatures in each congressional district verified by the county in which everybody lives, and then you got to turn them into the state. 3 offices in Indiana that do that. Number 1 is the president, number 2 is the governor, and number 3 is the U.S. Senate. 500 signatures of registered voters verified by the county clerk in which they live, then turned into the state. So for the better part of 7 months, I was on this track last year. From July of 2021, which I announced, till that deadline on February 4th, 2022. I was traveling the state, gathering signatures, meeting great people. And I once got the question on the campaign trail, what is it about Indiana that separates a state from any other state? And I said, without a doubt, Hoosier hospitality. Because I cannot tell you the amount of people here, the amount of people in Evansville, the amount of people up in Fort Wayne, the amount of people in Crown Point that said, if you ever need a place to stay, don't waste your money on a hotel room. Come stay with us, because we'd love to have you. That doesn't happen everywhere. But that speaks to exactly who Hoosiers are. That's what separates Indiana from everybody else. Hoosier hospitality. So as I was traveling the state, I was gathering these signatures. The campaign ended up with about 600 signatures in each congressional district that we had to get verified by the counties. And a lot of those counties were throwing signatures out. So I'll give you an example. If you have to write the address where you are registered to vote. So if you have moved, and I started collecting these signatures in July of 2021, turning them in January of 2022. So a good portion of people very well could have moved in that amount of time. They throw that signature out. I can tell you as a fact, I did have one person in Johnson County write their wrong date of birth. I remember that one because it sticks out. I didn't expect that one. But at the end of the day, when it came down to the deadline, February 1st at noon was the deadline to turn them into the counties. And I was in Fort Wayne that day, turning in the last of my signatures into Allen County. And I go into Marion County the next day, February 2nd. I had turned in signatures on January 13th. I had turned in signatures on January 31st. I had people that I knew were turning more signatures in on February 1st, before the deadline. February 2nd, I go in to get my signatures back, because once you get them verified, you have to turn them into the state. And they tell me, well, they're not ready yet. Oh, okay, all right, I'll grab them, the next couple days before the deadline. Well, we have this huge snowstorm on February 3rd, where a good portion of the state is shut down. And February 4th at noon is the deadline to get everything into the state. I go into Marion County to pick up my signatures February 4th in the morning. They're not open. Still closed because of the storm. I go into the secretary, the election division office at the state in Indianapolis and turn in 8 congressional districts worth of signatures. And I say, this is everything but the 7th, because they won't give me back my signatures and they're not open. Well, according to the election division, the rules are the rules, and my candidacy was going to be challenged. So 1 week later, I got the notification my candidacy was officially challenged. But the interesting part is, when these signatures were given to Marion County, like I said, January 13th, I turned in signatures. Didn't get them back till after the deadline, but I turned them in. January 31st, I turned in signatures. February 1st, I had other people turning in signatures. What happens is, when you turn in the signature sheet, the county clerk will timestamp them to prove that you got them in on time. Then what happens is, on the back of that form, they have not only the county seal, but they have the county clerk will put their signature down to prove they looked at these forms. That's the double check, so that you know, yeah, you turned them in on time, but the county has to look at it. Because it doesn't matter if there's no valid signatures, the county has to prove that they looked at the signature form. So, as I collect the signatures from Marion County the week after the deadline, I realized they didn't verify anything from February 1st. Timestamped in on time. They didn't verify anything. That's interesting. And I'm sitting there against the election division, and I bring this up because it was very well known. I had no signatures turned in from Marion County. And I give them the story of how I went in 3 times the week of the deadline, and Marion County refused to give me my signatures. And then the week after the deadline, when I went in to get the signatures, they refused to give them to me until I told them it was after the deadline and I just wanted them back. And I showed them. I showed each of the 4-person panel that these were time-stamped. I did it. I got them time-stamped. They were turned in on time. No county seal on the back. No county clerk signature on the back of those pages. Which means even though I turned them in on time, the county doesn't have to verify them, so I can get them back to the state. And I bring that up to the election division. They didn't care. Why? They didn't want me on the ballot. I'll tell you this, there was a letter from the state chair, Kyle Hupfer, down to every single county GOP chairman or chairwoman that said I was not supposed to speak at any county event. Yeah, I had a couple county chairmen show me that letter. I'll tell you this, I managed to tick off just about every single one in the state party. When I went to Adams County, when I went to Adams County for their Christmas party, their last event in December to get signatures, I had the secretary of the GOP, not the Secretary of State, the secretary of the GOP state party, yell at me for getting signatures. In front of everybody, yelled at me for getting signatures at a GOP event in which I am a member of the GOP. That's how bad they didn't want me on the ballot. So push comes to shove, they throw me off the ballot. And I can tell you this, I know a lot of people were upset that day. Yeah, and I was upset. I'll be honest, yeah, I was upset. But I didn't lose a night of sleep over it, because I knew I gave it 110%. I slept fine after that, even though I didn't get on the ballot, even though they kicked me off the ballot. I slept fine after that. But then the calls started coming in. Danny, we want you to do something for the general election. And months went by, and I was getting calls and emails. We really need somebody to step up and take on Todd Young. And I was telling people, even at the GOP convention just last month, where I was talking to somebody, and this person from Northwest Indiana comes up and asks me if I will run as an independent or a write-in. And I tell him, I can't do it. Number one, it's a huge feat. And number two, I don't want to siphon votes from the Libertarian candidate. I mean, I know so many people are upset about Todd, they'll vote for the Libertarian. And then Todd did something that I thought was unimaginable.
Which one?
The week after the GOP convention, the Senate, the U.S. Senate voted on this gun measures bill that came out of the Uvalde shooting. And Todd Young voted yes. Now, keep in mind that you have to have 60 members in the U.S. Senate to put a bill to the debate floor where it can then get passed. And right now it's a 50-50 split with Vice President Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker. So if you ever want to get anything passed, there has to be at least 10 Republican senators crossing that line. Todd Young was one of those senators. Because without him, they couldn't have done this. Now, then it comes to the vote for the actual bill, which he then voted yes on again. 80-page bill. 80-page bill that comes out an hour before the vote. And according to Marco Rubio, no GOP senator read that bill. And I believe I even saw an article where Todd Young admitted he did not read the bill. You know, if you want to talk about compromising on some values, you know, say an infrastructure bill comes up and you don't want to spend more than $1 trillion, but the bill comes out and it's $1.5 trillion and you vote for it, okay, that's compromise. But when you talk about voting to restrict your constitutional amendment and a bill which you didn't even read, and you were an automatic yes vote with no debate, that crosses a line. And after his vote on that, I received over 100 calls and texts and emails to get in this race. And I was completely overwhelmed. My best friend would tell you I was completely overwhelmed. And I sent 5 text messages out to 5 people that I trusted throughout the state. Hey, this is what I'm being called to do. What do you guys think? And every single one of them came back and said, absolutely do it. So currently, I am a write-in candidate for U.S. Senate against Senator Todd Young. And I'll tell you, this is a mountain to climb. This is the worst odds you could possibly have to take on. This is it. So let me explain exactly how the write-in process works. First of all, I do have cards out on the table back there, front and back. The back side has this process on. To be an official write-in candidate, you have to file with the Indiana Election Division. I filed. They send a list of all approved candidates to all 92 counties. When you go into the voting booth and you see that race for U.S. Senate, you'll see the Republican, the Democrat, the Libertarian, any independent candidates, and then you'll see a button that says write-in. And if you press that button, a keyboard will pop up. And there you just type in Danny Niederberger. Sounds simple, right? Danny, how are we going to spell your last name? It's complicated. Believe me, I know. I've been spelling it for 30 years. Under Indiana code, you do not have to spell my name 100% correct. All you have to do is make a reasonable effort to spell my name so that the election official can know who you're trying to vote for. Because when they get that notification that a write-in was selected, they compare what was typed in to that list of candidates that they get from the state. And if they can match one to the other, the vote counts. Yes, this is a huge, huge hill to climb. But you know what? Why not? If you don't do it, who are you going to vote for? I mean, in all honesty, I've been getting the litany from the past few weeks from everybody across the state. Number one thing that I get, and I understand it, number one thing that I get is, well, what if we split the vote and the Democrat gets in?
What's the difference?
Exactly, what's the difference? I mean, number one, when I was campaigning in the primary, I was talking about how Todd Young voted for that infrastructure bill that passed, that $1.5 or $2.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Same circumstance. The Senate couldn't get anything done unless the Republicans went across the line and voted for it, and Todd voted for it. Of that bill, less than 40% of it actually went towards roads and bridges and actual infrastructure. Okay, number two, gun measure bill. He went across the line and voted for that too. But then you look at his voting record. He voted to confirm Pete Buttigieg as Transportation Secretary. He voted to confirm Secretary Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken. I mean, when you actually look at the voting record of this guy, what is the actual difference? I mean, at the end of the day, if the Democrat gets in, if we split the vote enough and for some reason the Democrat gets in, at least you know what the Democrat's going to do. And at least you know in 6 years, not only do you want a Republican in office, but the Republican establishment wants a Republican in office too. So now you're on the same page. You know, I originally said I didn't want to siphon votes from the Libertarian candidate. And what ultimately convinced me of that is I had groups from Northwest and Southwest Indiana say they weren't going to vote for him. And I asked them why, and they said, because of his stance on life. And I don't want to take anything away from him or the Libertarian Party, but it is a point of emphasis. While the Libertarian candidate is pro-life personally, the Libertarian Party is not. And that's a huge problem. Because what they do is, if you actually look in their party platform, they have the term bodily autonomy, which is the same wording the Democrat Party uses. And that scares me. Sure, he may be pro-life personally, but who's going to hold him accountable? And like I said, I don't want to take away anything away from him. He's a great guy. If you talk to him, he's a great guy. So I don't want to take anything away from him. But that was the concerns that were brought to me. And that's why I ultimately decided to do this. So that's the strategy. Website, DannyForHoosiers.com, DANNYFORHoosiers.com. There's a way to sign up. We have a weekly email that goes out. There's a way to sign up on the website if you want to give any information. We're trying to create a master list of volunteers so that what we can do is we can be at polling locations all on election day and unfortunately election season, because Indiana won't strengthen that law. But we're trying to have people at every single polling place during the election, letting people know that they have a choice. You have a choice in this election to send a message not only to Todd Young, but to the Republican Party. And I'll share this with you as well. For the first 2 weeks after I announced, I got calls from a lot of Todd Young's field staff. So when I filed on Monday morning, and I got a text from a guy that I know in the 9th District, and he said, hey, I just want you to know, I got a call from Todd's field agent in the 9th, and they were pleading with me not to let you go through with this. And I texted him back and I said, it's too late, I just filed. I've gotten calls from Todd's field staff throughout the state begging me not to do this. And you know what that's telling me? That's telling me they're scared. So while we see that there's this huge mountain decline for an even sliver of a chance, it's telling me this can be done. This has happened in the past. Lisa Murkowski won as a write-in candidate. It is possible. But it's not possible without you guys. So as I end this portion and we're going to go into a Q&A, I just want to remind you of this. I'm here at your guys' leisure. This is a two-way relationship. You guys are the boss. I am your representative. And never, ever forget that. Because that's what you guys deserve. That's how this republic was formed. You guys are the boss in this relationship, not the other way around. So I welcome any and all questions when it comes to the Q&A. Again, I try to answer things the best I can. So thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
And it wasn't just talk. Running for political office is a huge investment of time, energy, and usually money. Usually a lot of the candidates' money goes into it. So anybody willing to do that deserves our applause. Let me take care of a little business, and I definitely want to give at least 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A. First, several of these speakers who were fantastic, I'll give you a chance to applaud when they come up for Q&A. If you want to have speakers like that, I'm probably going to have to go give blood in order to pay for my gas money. So we don't want them to have to pay for their gas money. So if Rick and Tim could grab some buckets, we're going to pass the bucket. If you can put in 5, 10, 20. Again, this is an all-volunteer organization. None of this money is coming to me or to Mara, but we do have expenses. We want to thank Return Church. We forgot to give our usual caveat. Nothing said by anyone here is an endorsement, and nothing is the position of Return Church. We are so thankful that they let us use their facilities, however. It's such a huge help. So if we have some money for them, we want to make sure that we give them an offering as well. So as that goes around, we just heard that John Colvin is going to be speaking at a debate. That's at the Charleston Town Hall Square? Charlestown Square. I'll have to look that up on Google Maps. But that's at 7 o'clock tomorrow if you can make it. There's another event that's happening on August 6th. I think that's the Saturday. That's in Florence, Kentucky. But Dr. Robert Malone, if anyone knows who that is, he's one of the leading COVID doctors. He will be speaking. State Senator Adrienne Southworth is going to be speaking from Kentucky. She's a leading figure in election integrity issues. And there will be a speaker from Purple for Parents, which is an Indiana organization that's promoting school choice, as well as 4 or 5 other speakers. It's being put on by the John Birch Society. There is a dinner. I think the fee is $100, but it goes from 1 till 9, and you're meeting, you know, fabulous, fantastic speakers. I'm definitely going. We also will be organizing, this likely will go through email, some things that we can do to push for this abortion bill. I remember, and I'm venting, you know, I'm mentally going through it, but I remember we have some connections that have offered to provide us with some bus fare to basically have a bus to take people up there and lobby for important bills, and maybe we can loop in for that. I'm definitely willing to come over here, and I know it's this way in Kentucky. If you get out in front of it and you call your legislator, they will meet with you in person if you set that up ahead of time. And I know they're going to be busy during this special session, but nothing is more convincing than a one-on-one conversation with legislators. So that would be the number one thing. But just showing that there are people that care about life as much or more than the people that are protesting on the other side of this issue that get all the media coverage. So we need to show that to your legislators and our legislators in Kentucky. Okay. I think that's all I've got. Oh, next meeting. The next meeting is August the 11th. It will be kind of a hodgepodge of topics, but it will definitely have a lot of material on self-sufficiency and homesteading, and I will try to get the speaker who's going to be teaching our constitutional rights class. Okay, if I could get all of our speakers to come up for a Q&A session. And let's give Curt Nisly, John Jacob, John Coburn, and Dan Niederberger a round of applause. I guess I can moderate this. My first question is, could Curt and John speak about some of the political dirty tricks that happened to you this campaign season that are as bad as what happened to Danny? Yeah, take that first.
So I'll combine and we'll talk about yours. So anyway, for mine, there were multiple aspects from my race that the Republican establishment, they made it very clear that they did not want me back in. So they lobbed, I think it was about a little over $600,000. The HRCC, just the HRCC, the House Republican Campaign Committee, launched about a little over $600,000, over $500,000 to my opponent to unseat me. Now, in addition, what was interesting is that we also went through redistricting this year. And constitutionally, every 10 years when the census data comes in, they have to redistrict all the districts and make all the districts uniform as far as the population, and so they redraw the lines. So, specifically, my District 93, it went from Marion County, which is a more liberal county, down into Johnson County, which is far, far more conservative. And my backing in Johnson County was immense. There was a lot of support that I had in Johnson County. So the Republican establishment decided that, guess what? They literally hacked everything off of Johnson County and shoved me all the way up into liberal Marion County. Not only that, they said they wanted to square up the districts. So they made mine look like a big wing. You know, they went out here, out to the west, so they could bring in a candidate that was already running for District 93. That candidate actually had over $1 million lawsuit filed against him, and he was in the process of that. So the Republican establishment knew that. So, and that candidate ended up backing
communicated that to the establishment. So the establishment, in the process of redistricting, also went out to the east, and they swooped in a former representative to make sure that she was in the district. So, and as the process went, before the final deadline for filing, she decided that she was not going to run. So I had another friend of mine, who was running for Congress. So he came to me and told me this. The Republican establishment went to him and said, hey, will you step out of your race so that you can run against John Jacob? He said, no, John Jacob is a friend of mine. I'm not going to do that. That was candidate number 3. So now the Republican establishment was trying to figure out what to do. So they ended up going up to the Senate staffer to get that person to run. So I go to a lot of other details as well. The Perry Township, one of the main townships in District 93, one of the senators, Senator Jack Sandlin, who just literally despises me. He went ahead and had them work to suspend the rules for their Perry Township Republican Committee to endorse this candidate against me. In addition, they ran a smear campaign just saying all sorts of crazy things. I mean, saying that I was not pro-life. That was about the most crazy one. So saying I was I was against I was for defunding the police because I thought that property tax was unconstitutional. And so I wanted to do away with property tax. So I wanted to reduce your property tax bill to 0. Or so I had another bill that would actually prohibit the government from confiscating property if you didn't pay your property tax.
Wow.
So they said, oh, because you are against having property taxes collected, you are against the police. I'm like, no, I voted for many bills on the issue of supporting our police force. Again, I had a bill to ban CRT. I had the strongest bill in the House to ban CRT, and they were saying I'm against children. I'm against parental rights. Curt and I had previously you had a bill that I co-authored with to ban porn in schools. So again, they were saying that I was against children. I'm like, are you kidding me? I had a bill, an amendment on the floor to put big fines on big tech. I mean, literally in the billions that I had on the House floor to just literally smack down social media with the issue of child porn that was being just proliferated out on the internet. So just multiple aspects like that. They ran the smear campaign, the money, and probably the last straw, I think, is when my wife found out. In Marion County, the Indiana GOP has their website set up for all of the elected officials in Marion County, which is Indianapolis. And my wife said, John, you're not on the website. I was the only elected official for Marion County that was not on that website. When I was going door knocking, and especially in the new area, people were going, I don't know who you are. And so I reached out to the GOP in Marion County, and they made some arbitrary decisions saying, we're just not going to put you on there. You're not allowed on there. You're an elected Republican. This is the Republican GOP website. But you know what? We decided that you're not allowed on there. So this is the kind of dirty tricks that the Republican GOP will do. And also, one other thing I will say is that the final thing. People talk about the dirty tricks that the establishment swamp launched against Curt and myself. But you know what? I want to tell people, that wasn't really against Curt Nisly or John Jacob. That was an insult to you, we the people. Because to me, Curt Nisly and myself, we represent a true conservative voice of people, not only in our districts, but across the state of Indiana. And there's a talk show host in Indianapolis named Rob Kendall at WIBC Radio. He puts it well. He said, you know what? The Republican establishment swamp hates true conservatives. That's the bottom line.
Okay. I'm going to make it real short here. So the question was, dirty tricks the establishment plays?
Exactly.
Okay, so first of all, Todd Young, since he didn't have an opponent for the primary, he sent his campaign team into my district to support my opponent. The HRCC, the the establishment put in over $1 million in 2 races to take out 2 incumbent Republicans. John has already said how much they spent on his, so you can do the math and figure out how much they spent on mine.
And I'd just say, for reference, in Kentucky, you can usually win a house seat, a state house seat, for $20,000 to $60,000. So we're talking about them putting 10, 20,000, 20 times that much into a house seat. So it's just insane amounts of money against people that are of their own party. This isn't against Democrats. This is against people of their own party.
And that being said, we had raised almost $100,000 ourselves, like way more than I had ever done before. And I look back at the campaign, I think we made mistakes. It was not our best campaign by any means. But the Empire can strike back, and they did. But the reality is, we can strike back too. And so that's where I was freed up now. I am free from the duty to serve now, and now I can do other things. And I'm looking forward to see what those other things are going to be.
I want to let people.
There was one kind of important thing under redistricting. So we did redistricting, we've talked about redistricting. When the maps came out in 2021, so the last fall, there was one place in the state where there were 2 incumbent members, not just any members, Republican, Democrat. Only one place in the state where 2 members were drawn into the same district that were planning to run for re-election. Can you guess where that might have been? It was in Kosciuszko County. It was me. It was pretty clear that they were trying to take me out. When I was out knocking doors. It was about half of the district was new, and I spent a lot of time talking to, especially the new voters, to some of the old district. The response at those was overwhelming. Like, I thought I was going to win. There was no reason to think otherwise. But when the votes were when they were coming in on election night, I was shocked. 27%. That's all I got. The raw vote count was half of any number I'd ever got before. And so they ran a campaign. They really did. And I haven't figured out it all yet. But hey, the bottom line is I'm free and I'm happy.
Okay, I want to let anyone in the crowd, the only restriction is make sure it's a question. We don't need a speech and then a question.
I wrote a letter, and I also called Todd Young in regard to his voting on the red flag law. And his response, he wrote me a 2-page letter. And he said, well, he also based his vote on the fact that Indiana has red flag laws. That was news to me, so I'm asking if you might be able to fill me in there. But I was terribly disappointed with him, so.
Yes, Indiana does have red flag laws. My position on red flag laws is this. Number one, there has to be 2 provisions in any red flag law before I would even consider a vote. Number one, you have to have due process before any gun is ever taken away. Otherwise, that's ousting the Second Amendment. Number 2, there has to be something in there for malicious reporting. Because that's a problem that we have right now. Anybody can go up and say, hey, this person's suffering from PTSD, they need their guns taken away. And, you get into it, divorced couple, something like that, they put a fake report in, gun taken away. So the 2 provisions that I've always said have to happen from any red flag law. Again, number 1, due process before the gun is ever taken away. And number 2, there has to be a provision in there for malicious reporting. Now, Todd's answer on the red flag laws, even if that were true and he based it on Indiana's red flag law, that's such a broad definition, you still need to read the bill to know exactly what you're voting on.
And he did.
Can I chime in here a little bit? So Indiana was actually one of the first states with red flag. We were the pioneers. It was before my time. So, but what Danny just said, that's the problem with red flag laws. There is no due process. It's a matter of taking away the guns before there's the due process. That's why it's called red flag. It's like, hey, there's a red flag here, go take their guns. That's what it is. But here's the deal, okay? Maybe it is perfectly fine right now, but what happens? What's the criteria? At some point, if you are a patriot or attend some kind of a patriot meeting, they could say you're a terrorist. They can come take your guns. It's going to happen. If you're a Christian, you're mentally unstable, obviously. So they're going to come take your guns. It's going to happen. That's the problem with red flag laws.
And if I could comment a little about the bill that was signed does not mandate, doesn't make a national red flag law. But this is a good lesson for how the federal government influences. What it does is it gives billions of dollars to implement red flag law implementation. So they didn't themselves make a national red flag law, but they will give billions to states who do institute red flag laws. So it's just a matter of that government purse string comes with always strings attached. Okay, anyone else?
Sorry for my ignorance here. I'm still learning a lot of stuff, but on the 1282 bill that you guys are having on July 25th, could you, I'm not really sure, but you said you might be meeting for 2 weeks, and tell me a little bit about the process, or who meets there, and then if it passes or not, because we're all praying on my groups, but I really don't know whether they're all praying for that.
Okay.
So if you could explain it more.
Okay, so that's the one you want to pray for. So the reality is 1282 will not be the bill. I can tell you that for certain, that House Bill 1282 will not be the bill number that goes through, but it's the language of the bill, it's the contents of a bill. What they're going to, okay, so the legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate in Indiana, so the state House and the state Senate, we make up the legislature, we make the laws. We're going to be going back into special session on July 25th. We'll go until we're done. I think we have until August 14th to get done. I have never been through a multi-day special session in the 8 years that I've been there. So I don't know either all the details. But what they will do is in committee, they'll take a bill that's already in the committee, and in committee then they'll make an amendment, they'll make a change to whatever bill they pull up, and they'll put language into that, and now that becomes the bill. We don't know what that bill number is yet, but as the time comes closer, we'll learn that. That's why you text 4Life to 66866, because that's the way that we will keep you informed as to what it is. At this point, we don't know a lot of things. We know that the governor has asked the legislature, he says he wants the legislature to take up the issue. But beyond that, there's really not many details that we know about. Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
Definitely text this number, and then make sure you're on our mailing list. I'm sure we'll send out some emails for some sort of coordinated strategy. Next.
John Colbert. I'm still trying to understand, is the person in charge friendly with your opponent? In other words, did they work together? Was this kind of planned to keep you out? Did they do to you what they've been doing to others? My understanding is this law that they're using was just recently created. And it seems to me like it was done to keep good people out. I don't understand.
I'm not exactly sure of the timing of when that law was passed. It seems like 18, 19?
Oh, 21.
21.
21.
Okay, wow. But yeah, the law is that you had to vote as a Republican or a Democrat in the 2 most recent primaries in which you voted.
In Indiana.
In Indiana, right. And so I have lived at my current address for 3 primaries. And I voted in the first one, and in the past, the middle 2, well, the 2 that mattered, it was Donald Trump, and that was really it. So there was no point really in me voting in those 2 primaries. And then when I went to turn in my paperwork, the GOP chairman said, I'm not going to let you get on the ballot. Even though the county chairman have the authority to waive that rule or that law, he would not do it. And then as the delegate, the laws or the rules for the Republican Party that I found online said that you only had to vote in 1 primary to qualify as a delegate on the ballot. And so when I presented that to them, they were able to find exceptions to that. And so inside the election commission hearing, they voted with the current chair, and so I wasn't able to do that either. But it just provides me 2 more years to campaign.
That's right, yes.
So just so that you know, in Indiana, you do not declare that you are a Republican or a Democrat. When you register to vote, you do not pick one or the other. So they base it off what you vote for in the primaries. When you go to the poll, you select either the Republican or the Democrat primary ticket. And that's what they base this off of. In 2021, prior to 2021, it was the last primary you voted in. And then in 2021, they changed the rules to the previous 2 primaries.
And I'm going to belabor this just a little bit further because it is kind of important. And it's been a big deal. It got a lot of people kicked off or kept them from running this year. So in 2021, the legislature, it was in a conference committee report come over from the Senate. It was the first time, like, it was a House bill, but it was not in the bill when it left the House. But when it came back, it was in there. So here's an example. Okay, so this changed in 2021 for the 2022 election cycle, was the first time it was in effect. So there was a gentleman on the west side of the state that was wanting to run for Congress. He was a military guy. He had voted in 2016 in the Trump-Cruz primary in 2016. But then he was in the military. He was all over the world. So he did not vote in 18. But in 18, he would have been eligible to run for Congress in that district. In 2020, he was around the world, didn't vote in the primary, but he was eligible to run for Congress in that primary. In 2022, he puts his name on the ballot to run for Congress. And he gets kicked off because he's no longer eligible, because the law changed with 0, like there was not any time to actually correct it and do an additional vote. But here's the real big issue that I have with it, okay? It's the Indiana Constitution. Indiana Constitution says that in order to run for state representative, you have to be 21 years old, and you've had to live in the state of Indiana for 2 years. Now, pull out your calculators, and if you're 21 years old and you want to run for House of Representatives, and you've lived here for 2 years, okay, and voted in one more primary, the way it was, okay, you were 19, you could run for House of Representatives. But now the law changed. Now you have to vote in 2 primaries. So you go back 2 years, you were 19, and then you go back 2 more years. How old would have you been? 17. Ladies and gentlemen, it is unconstitutional. It's illegal to vote when you're 17. You can't. So now, a 21-year-old that wants to run for state representative, as the Constitution says, you can't do it. The other point here is that Indiana, it says 2 years. You have to live here for 2 years. But now, you'd have to live here for 4 years because it says you have to vote in an election in Indiana. So now we have expanded that to 4 years. So forget, even if it's not the 21, anyone who moved in from out of state has to live here now for 4 years and vote in 2 primaries. So blatantly unconstitutional in my opinion.
Okay, no more than two. Anybody else? Got one more.
Okay, first thing is for David Niederberger, and why did we run as an independent? And also, will you be needing door knockers? How do you sign up? And will you be able to get a list of Republican voters so that you can do that door knocking?
Yes, I can get a list of Republican voters to know who to door knock on and numbers to call. If you want to sign up, DannyForHoosiers.com, there's a sign up page on there. Just put that you want to volunteer, we'll reach out to you. If you want to door knock, absolutely, I can definitely use the help.
Or let us know.
What was that?
Or let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the first part of the question?
Why didn't you run as an independent?
Why didn't I run as an independent? Under state law, if you want to run as an independent as opposed to a write-in, you have to have 2% of the previous Secretary of State's total turnout vote of signatures, same signature process, but the total number has to be 2% of the previous Secretary of State's total vote turnout, which in this case would be about 30,000 signatures. So in the primary, 500 signatures in each congressional district, 4,500, and this would be 30,000. And that deadline to get those in, I believe, was the end of June. So when I had people reaching out to me, there just wasn't enough time. And then the second reason, after thinking about it, quite honestly, write-in was the better option anyway, because if you declare that you're an independent, that means that you declare you are unaffiliated with a party, which means the Republicans could then call me a Republican not in good standing and oust me from the party. So, kind of a few different reasons. That last one just sort of noticed after the fact, but all, yeah.
And I'd say, and so one of the benefits, I think Danny knows and everyone here knows, running as a write-in is a very long shot. But what he is doing is he's building name recognition. And that's the name of the game in politics. If people know your name, that puts you way ahead of the game for that next office you're running for. So whether he wins or not, hopefully he does, but by running as a write-in, his name is getting out there for the next seat. And I think he has a big future in politics.
Thank you.
All right, one more question. Anybody?
And this is, I know off the topic, but are you guys aware of any other elected officials that attended the World Economic Forum besides our governor?
I personally am not.
I don't know of anyone other, and I would sure hope that they wouldn't let us know.
And the second question that I have is that California seems to be the cancer that invades our country, and I understand that they are debating passing a law that you can murder a baby up to 28 days after it's born. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything specifically about California, so thanks for bringing that up. I do know that in, I think it was Virginia, in Rhode Island, New York, in several of the eastern states, they've been talking about killing them at least up until the time they're born or after they were born, actually. Yeah. What's that?
It passed, it is law in New York and Virginia, you may murder the baby after it is born.
Wow.
They don't care for it, basically. The baby's just allowed to pass, no care whatsoever.
Wow. So, you know, I have not heard that in Indiana, any proposals like that. I want to, can I just take a minute to explain the Overton window or the box of political possibilities? So, on any issue, the ends the center is determined by the ends, by the extremes. So on any issue, the left is pulling over here and saying, this is what we want. The right, it's whatever's over here. So when I proposed the life bill in 2016, what we did was, instead of this compromise right to life position in the center, we pulled the end to the extreme over here. Let's ban abortion. We moved the center. And what has happened in Indiana over the last 6 years is we've been pulling that box, the center, the political possibility our way. And wow, it looks like we are actually in a place where we could ban abortion or get really, really close to doing it here. None of this mamby-pamby stuff, and it still could happen. But I'm hearing the conversation to our right. I'm not hearing the conversation going to the left in Indiana. It's all about moving that box our way.
All right, and I want to end on a point of hope. I don't think we've addressed it here in this, but your Republican candidate for Secretary of State will be Diego Morales in the fall. So figuring out how to win by playing the game, and that's what Diego did. Diego worked his bottom off. He went to every single county in this state, knocking on doors, talking to groups like this, and he was actually able to take out what is essentially what the installed candidate for Secretary of State. So, I mean, it's an enormous victory for our cause, and as I'm sure you know, the Secretary of State is the principal election official in every state in the union. So he's going to have a huge influence, and so make sure you vote for Diego in the fall. All right, I want everyone to give these candidates a hand. We need more reflection. And I'm sure they're not going to sprint out the door. Make sure you look up Angie Jacob and Mary Nicely Oslo. They're activists and they have lots of wisdom that they can give us. All right, thank you.